Hey all, Jason Levon, priest at St. Luke's Episcopal Church in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Welcome to another Pause and Pray. If this is your first Pause and Pray, I apologize in advance. This one's going to sound a little churchy nerdy, but I'm a priest and sometimes I'm a church nerd and I'm proud of it. Because I'm going to talk a little bit about the person in this icon right here. I love icons, and this is probably my favorite icon in the rectory. It's an icon of Saint Irenaeus. Today is his feast day, June 28th. He's considered a saint in the Roman Catholic tradition, in the Eastern Orthodox tradition, and in the Anglican tradition, of which the Episcopal Church is a part. He was born in the mid-100s, died in the early 200s, was instrumental in pushing the church to think deeply and creatively and diversely about faith and life. Why I really look up to Irenaeus is really because he was courageous enough and willing enough to think and pray and reflect against the grain of what many people were thinking and praying and reflecting on at that time and even to this day. So, for example, here's where it gets a little church nerdy. One of the questions that Irenaeus wrestled with, that the early church did and the church to this day still thinks about and prays about and ponders, is how does Jesus save us? If we believe Jesus saves, how does that happen? The classical answer is that Jesus saves through his death. He died for us because we were sinners. We're not capable of saving ourselves, so Jesus' death atoned for our sins, and salvation is possible as a result. Irenaeus thought differently. Irenaeus thought against the grain, prayed against the grain, reflected against the grain, and believed that the way in which we were saved was not because of Jesus' death, but because of his birth. That in the incarnation, God revealed a love that was willing to literally walk in our shoes, wrap God's self in skin, and walk with us, meet us where we're at in life, just as we are, and walk with us from there. And that began the work of salvation. What Jesus' death revealed was that there were no limits to what that love would or would not touch. Even the darkest, scariest moments would be touched by the love that began in the incarnation, in Jesus' birth, in God wrapping God's self in skin and meeting us where we're at to walk with us on our journeys of life and faith and hope and love. I'm grateful for Irenaeus because even in the early church, it reveals the great diversity of thought within Christianity. That's not always comfortable for us. Sometimes we want clear black and white answers, and this has always been the answer. But when we look back, we see there was a lot of diversity. Peter and Paul didn't think the same. Irenaeus didn't think the same, and that was already in the early church. I don't know about you, but I find a great gift and beauty in diversity, in general and within Christianity. I'm glad that not everybody thinks like me, lives like me, looks like me, comes out of the same culture as I do. I think the world's a much more beautiful and better place because of that. And I think people like Irenaeus played a part in making the world that beautiful, helping us see how God can work so beautifully through a rich and diverse tapestry of lives and expressions of faith and spiritual journeys. So it's along those lines then that we're invited to pause and pray today. Maybe just reflecting as a whole in gratitude for the gift of diversity in the world and in our lives. But also maybe to pause and pray and reflect specifically on the gift of those Irenaeuses in our lives. Those people who are courageous enough to catch us off guard in good and holy ways, to surprise us by their willingness to think and live and reflect and pray outside of the box. Because that's most often where we meet God in marvelous ways. Not inside of any boxes we try to construct, because God can't be contained by those, but outside. And it's people like Irenaeus that help us realize that. God's peace and blessings to you all.